Welcome to the Be Empowered podcast with your host, Graham Hopkins. My goal is to help you regain your power by bridging the gap between who you think you are right now and who you really are. In simple language, that is like making your childhood dreams come true. This is for those who want to make an impact in their lives but don't know how to get there. Be ensured, when you know and feel connected to your spiritual mind, you master your world.
So welcome everybody to this edition of the Be Empowered Show. I'm your host, Graham Hopkins. Today we have a wonderful guest. His name is John Mark Stroud. One of the things that I noticed we have in common, John Mark, is that we both have an interest in aviation. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your interest with aeroplanes?
Sure, I love aviation. I'm really excited. I'm going to take my first flight on a 747 in a few weeks. I haven't ever done that, so I'm excited about that. My fascination with aviation started as a child. To me, it represented freedom, to be unbound from the earth. So fairly early when I finally came into the financial means to become a pilot, I pursued it with great joy and excitement and found I had a great knack for it. What I found that I loved about it was, it was the time when everything else would slip away because, of course, as you know, it requires great attention and great focus. And it's where you're in control, really. I mean, you have to be present to operate the aircraft. As you remember, it was always fly the plane first. So I really enjoyed the freedom that it represented. But even in this childhood fascination, that kind of wasn't enough. So then what birthed within my awareness was, I'm going to build my own airplane. That will bring complete fulfillment. Because as much as I'd enjoyed flying, there was still something empty about it. So I built my own airplane, and what a blast that was, to be able to construct and then fly your own airplane. Fabulous experience. But again, something was kind of missing. My dream that would be fulfilled by aviation or by building my own airplane didn't quite get fulfilled. There was something that was still missing. So aviation is a beautiful interest and still an avocation that I enjoy following. I don't fly much anymore. I don't fly as a pilot anymore. But it contributed to my own evolution, my own awakening, because it was just one more thing that my mind had told me, this dream will fulfill me. And of course, I was able to manifest it, and it didn't actually fulfill me. It didn't complete me.
That feeling of freedom, I've learnt, I've been in the aviation game 43 years now. I'll be 40 years as an airline pilot in January 2015, so it's been a long journey.
Wow.
But it's been very good to me, John Mark, in that it's taught me many, many spiritual lessons, and that's what I want to ask you. Having built an aeroplane and been a pilot of that aircraft, do you have any analogies that you learnt through aviation that really you've used to bring forth a better John Mark in this life?
Well, I mentioned it a little bit. Aviation was an out-picturing for me, and building an aircraft was an out-picturing for me of a deep inner longing to do two things, to create and to be free, which I have learned is the essence of all of our being. All of us share this deep longing for freedom and to create. We were all created mysteriously by the Creator. You can call that God or all that is or Allah or whatever name you want to give it. It doesn't matter. Some mystery beyond all our comprehension has created all things. Its fundamental expression is it's limitlessly free and it's ceaselessly creating. It's ceaselessly extending itself. So aviation for me was the outpicturing, and building my airplane was the outpicturing of this kind of inner longing of my being. Now, I had made building my own airplane and flying the goal, like the end game. And that's where I was disappointed, because it only provided a temporary fulfillment. It didn't provide complete fulfillment. So in the pursuit of it, something deeper within me was being birthed, with desiring expression, desiring experience. But I had misperceived what aviation would do and what building my own airplane would do for me. But it helped me to, one, cultivate and let that excitement, that joy, that desire to create, that desire to be free to move through me. And when it didn't quite completely fulfill, it propelled me even deeper into the search for what is fulfilling, what is wholeness, what will bring an everlasting kind of sense of peace.
Yeah.
So, that's how it served me.
So one of the themes that I uphold in this show is that we are seeing life through separation, and my goal is to help people bridge that gap like you've done. You obviously didn't find it in aviation, but you've obviously bridged that gap somehow. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, not only did I not find it in aviation, I didn't find it in food or sex or money or relationships or any other kind of way in which I tried to pursue fulfillment. You mentioned we're all perceiving life through separation. We think we're experiencing one universe, but in truth, Graham is a universe, Y-O universe. John Mark's a universe. All other beings are experiencing this one infinite mystery from a distinct point of view that we tend to call me, and we associate that pretty much exclusively with our bodies. And that's kind of the root of the fear of separation, is when we believe we're bodies, we believe that when the body is no longer functional, or what the world might call death, that we may cease to exist. So we operate in a state of fear. We think our universe is going to disappear. And what I have discovered in my own deep and profound inner inquiry, and the revelation within my being about the nature of reality itself and the nature of all being, is that we're actually not separate. We've done a very clever job of disguising our wholeness into what seem to be separate little universes, if you will, which seem to be identified as individual bodies. But that's not the whole of it. That's not the truth of it. And when you awaken, it's awakening because you only come back to a deeper knowing. The symbol in spirituality about awakening is there's a truth. You're not aware of it now. You're sleeping, just as when we might sleep at night. But then we awake back to a truth that was previously known. So that's the beauty of the kind of spiritual path, is you're only reawakening to this grander aspect of yourself. So when that realization happens, and it will happen for everyone. It's not a secret. The Creator, the universe, truth is not trying to hide itself from anyone. It's just we rarely look for truth because we think we already know what truth is.
Yeah.
And if we start to question what we think truth is, we can get pretty frightened. So sometimes we don't pursue a greater truth. We don't question reality as we seem to be experiencing it. But when we do, and we reawaken to what I would call our eternal capacity, our eternal beingness, our wholeness, all of a sudden life takes on a very new dimension. You no longer fear because you recognize an expression as a body is an incredibly tiny, almost infinitely tiny aspect of your being. That, you're literally at one with all that is, and the body's just a very, very, very temporary thing. And it's no more a body coming and going, being birthed or dead. It's really no different than a leaf falling off a tree. You know, it's created, it expresses, and then it dissipates. And there's no fear in that when you recognize you're the whole field of creation in which all these things are mysteriously happening ceaselessly. So coming to that, go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask, how did that experience unfold for you?
It started to be birthed. Now that it's kind of all happened, I recognize they were signals and hallmarks my whole life. But it really kind of began for me in 2007 when a deep money hadn't fulfilled me, relationships hadn't fulfilled, nothing had satiated this longing within my being. And I realized at some point I could no longer seek it outside of myself. I couldn't seek it in aviation or in any other thing. And I finally said, wow, this, I can see there's a strategy running here. My mind tells me this next thing will do it. This next great thing will do it. This next great thing will do it. This whatever. And I had run out enough of those to realize, you know what, all of those end up in the same dead end, that there's just another thing. You know, the longing doesn't get fulfilled. So I made what in spirituality might be called the turn. I began to turn within and seek what could be found within, because I had never found it without. So when I made that turn, it's like all the creation started to show up towards me in a different way. You know, you could call them miracles, you could call them synchronicities, synchrodestinies. All of a sudden, things started showing up in my life that would facilitate this kind of inner surge. And for me, there were a couple of very prominent things. There was the Course in Miracles, the Way of Mastery, the Course of Love, and kind of the I Am Word work. And these are four, if you might call it, channeled Christ consciousness pathways that help facilitate this inner movement of remembrance. And that's all it is. We make enlightenment out to be this special thing. And quite frankly, it's the most basic, natural, and ordinary thing. There's actually nothing special at all about it, except that it's extraordinarily peaceful. So I started making that turn inwards, and I began to hear what I would call an inner voice. I began to hear within my consciousness, as I began to turn within instead of looking without, something that I would call a greater wisdom. You know, it's given many names: your inner guru, your higher self, the Holy Spirit, your Antaryam, and whatever. Again, the names really don't matter. But I began to hear this inner dialogue and engaged in a dialogue with it, and I was amazed at the presence, the wisdom, the joy, the ease of this kind of inner presence. Now, I came to find out later that that was actually nothing but my true self. I perceived it as separate because I thought I was a body. And I thought this eternal wisdom that I was feeling couldn't, of course, be me, because I was identified as John Mark, the body that was born. Come to find out that that voice was only my true self, my higher self, if you will. So in a short story, I used these pathways and did what they said. They said, turn within, ask, and truth will be revealed. I kept doing that. More truth kept being revealed. The more truth that was revealed, the more excited I got about it. The more excited I got, the more I wanted to know. And it was just this beautiful kind of, in my case, it was a pretty effortless, easy, and very, very fun unfoldment. When the engagement with that voice started, I had heard somewhere out, I'd gone to some little spiritual function, and someone said awakening. And I was like, awakening? What the hell is that? I woke up this morning. No, I don't get this whole, what are they talking about? So on the drive home, I asked this inner presence, what is this awakening? And the voice responded, you're not who you think you are. And I said, okay, well, if I'm not who I think I am, then who am I? And the voice simply responded, well, that's what you're awakening to. And I said, well, I don't know what this awakening is all about, but I see a lot of beings suffering, even on what might be called the spiritual path. So I said, I want this to be effortless, painless, quick, and fun. To which the inner dialogue responded, the truth is true now. Is that quick enough? If you're suffering, you believe that the truth isn't true now. You're believing what might be called an illusion. So are you willing to let that go and allow illumination to correct your perception? And 3, to the response that desired it to be fun, the inner voice, there was great joy and great laughter. So my pathway literally has been quick, pretty painless, and fun. It's not that I didn't run into pain because it was my own resistance, but when you realize you're doing it to yourself, you just stop.
So, J.M., I'd like to pursue why people have so much difficulty in connecting with their own truth.
Because we have cultivated a fear. Now, you could call it a fear of God, you could call it a fear of the unknown, you could call it fear of anything, lots of things. But we believe so deeply that we are our thoughts and our beliefs and our body and our concepts and our accomplishments and our past. When we begin to turn towards that inner voice, all of that gets challenged. Our whole identity begins to be challenged. Now, it takes a great amount of willingness to be willing to listen to something that's going to pretty much challenge, that's going to show you everything you believe is not true, everything you've experienced has been misperceived. So it's really a fear of death. We think if we turn outside of ourselves, we're going to lose ourselves. It's actually we only lose our ego and we awaken to our eternal self. But it's really just fear. And we've been told, oh my God, don't listen to voices in your head. I mean, you know, that's going to get you put in an insane asylum or something. So, you know, I have found that oftentimes one of the subtle things is we live, because we believe our world is private, we believe our mind is just ours, we usually live in a great sense of falsity. We live behind a lot of judgment. We live behind, I mean, it's self-judgment and worldly judgment and judgment of others. Now, when your consciousness seems private and you've used it to cultivate a deep sense of separation where you're judging others, you're commenting on others in your mind, you're angry with others, and you're deceitful about not being honest, well, there's so much self-deception and judgment in our egoic consciousness that we don't want it to be shared. We don't want to find out that that's that that's not private. We feel guilty. We feel shameful about it. So there's usually fear in opening up to that inner communion because we fear our judgments about ourselves and everyone else are going to be confirmed to be true. And that's kind of frightening.
That's a scary thought.
Enough, but to have the voice of the Creator or the voice of all that is speak in your own being and affirm everything you think about yourself and everyone else, that's pretty frightening. Now, come to find out, the opposite is what's going to be revealed to you. But you know, when we have all kinds of irrational fears about things we've never experienced.
I like your definition of the ego. You say it all began with a crazy mad idea that we had to create a split in consciousness. The resultant egoic mind can never ever know the truth. Can you tell us a bit more about this crazy mad idea?
Well, sure. That's the symbol that's used in the Course in Miracles, that into the one mind of God, if you will, crept this tiny mad idea. What would it be like to not be whole? What would it be like to not be one? Well, given the omniscience, the omnipotence, the power of the mind of God, consciousness itself, consciousness was able to appear to separate itself from itself. Now, it couldn't actually do it, but it could appear to do it. And I'll use a symbol. This is a simple way to so imagine a diamond that's a perfect sphere. It's whole, it's complete, it's perfect. At this tiny mad idea, the diamond chooses to manifest an infinite number of facets upon its face. So what was one now has the appearance of being very distinct and individual facets. So, Graham, you may be a facet and I may be a facet. Now, if we'd imagine if we're the facet and we're looking out from the diamond, we believe there's nothing out there. All the other facets are falling away from us, and we think we're distinct. We think we're alone. Now, the inner movement, when you begin to turn within, and you realize, oh my gosh, I'm not a facet, I'm the whole diamond, and the presence of all these infinite facets is what gives the diamond its incredible radiance, its infinite expression. And then you realize, oh God, of course, I am the whole diamond. The facets are just expression. They're not separate from it. I mean, a facet is in no way separate from the diamond. It just appears to be because we've labeled it and we've given it unique properties. But of course, it's just still the diamond. There's no change that's actually taken place. So that tiny mad idea, which was actually, from my point of view, a stroke of incredible creative brilliance, where consciousness itself decided to express itself in a way that was different, not destroying its fundamental nature, not changing the nature of the diamond itself, not actually splitting the diamond in two, but creating another expression of how that one thing could be experienced.
So how did that play out? I know you say that it all began with desire. So how does desire fit into the picture?
Wow, desire is the absolute fundamental creative, I mean, it's the core of what creates. I mean, everything that you do, you go to the refrigerator. You may not consciously be aware that there's a desire, but something's moving you that way. You become an airline pilot. Desire is the creative energy to create experience. Now, we oftentimes think it's about creating things, like I wanted to build an airplane, I wanted to create a thing. But what it is in truth is that we create experience. And our ability to ceaselessly create experience is never diminished or lost, no matter how much we create. So imagine the infinite one desiring to experience all the infinite ways in which it could experience itself, including this potential dream of separation, the diamond becoming faceted, so to speak. So we've been taught in the world that desire is a bad thing. You know, we have this self-help movement about goals and desires and motivation, and then we have this, you know, desire and money and abundance are the root of all evil. So there's the kind of split in how we play it out in the world. But everything that you have experienced in your life has been birthed in some form of desire. Without it, nothing happens, which is okay, but desire is the absolutely critical component of creation, and when we free it in our being, and if you want to use a master as an example, Jesus could desire fishes and loaves, and bam, they're manifest. No time required, no laws of nature, no fish needing to be born and grown. Now that's a pretty powerful desire made manifest. And of course, he was showing us what's true about the mind of God. The mind of God, if you will, can choose to create a universe, and it's manifest. Boom, there it is. There's no, you know, all the power is there. So we're all kind of waking back up to this nature of our creative being and getting back in relationship with desire. Now, it can be a very deep exploration in consciousness, because most of our desires that we have as humans are rooted in fear. They're rooted in the separation. They're rooted in a belief and a need to survive. That we don't recognize that what we are is consciousness itself, ceaselessly exploring itself. So when we waken to that, new desires begin to arise, and those desires tend to be to extend or to give rather than to get. Most of our desires as bodies are to get for the body. And was his simple teaching: it's better to give than receive. Not that receiving's bad, but most of our desires are rooted in fear, and we just don't even realize it. So when
Can you just go back to the original desire that caused the separation and explain how desire worked in that relationship?
Okay. Well, I'm going to give you an example, and this is one that was kind of shared with me. So let's assume, Graham, that you are the wealthiest person on the planet, and you have a house on every continent. You've got a fleet of your own airplanes that you fly, and you've got pilots. You've got everything that money could literally buy. Extraordinary freedom. But something is missing. And you have a thought one day, well, you know what? I wonder what it would be like to be homeless. You were born with a silver spoon, and all you've ever known is wealth and abundance. But one day you go, you know what? I have no idea what this is like. I don't have a clue what this is like. But I'm curious. I wonder what would it actually be like to be homeless. And of course, it seems to you absolutely insane, because you know how wealthy you are. You know, there's no way. How could I actually believe that I was homeless? I mean, you couldn't fake it, you know. But because you have so much money, you go to a doctor and a chemist, and you say, hey, I want you to create for me an amnesia shot so that I can actually forget who I really am. And again, because you've got all the capacity to do it, and if you've got all the money in the world, well, why not? So you go, you have this amnesia shot, and the next day you find yourself waking up on the street. You don't have a clue who you are. You've completely forgotten about the fact that who you were and all this wealth you had. So now you can have a really authentic experience of being homeless. So your power, your wealth, your abundance has actually created the ability for you to have an experience which seems absolutely contradictory to your truth, to your intrinsic, fundamental, deeply known truth. So you find yourself on the streets, and you walk up and down the streets, and you're in soup line, and now you're really having a rich experience of being homeless. I'm not by any means saying that you're enjoying it or that you're excited about it, but you're having a legitimate experience. But you know, you keep walking up and down the streets as a homeless person, you keep walking by this bank, and you walk by it thousands of times. And then one day as you walk by, you kind of look over, and there's just the subtlest note of familiarity. And you think, that's crazy. I couldn't know anything about this bank. I've never had any money. What? That's crazy. And you dismiss that thought, and you keep on going. Well, that subtle thing keeps nagging you every time you walk by that bank. Every time you walk by that bank, something's like, God, there's something familiar about that. What is it? And you walk by thousands of more times, and you finally go, God, you start to get imagery in your mind. You start to get feelings in your being that something is familiar about this. And one day you just go, you know what? Why not? I'm going to actually go in there and just see what this is all about. And you open the door, and there's the security guard that recognizes you and says, Graham, welcome back. Oh, all your money's here in the bank, all your wealth, all your abundance, all your creativity's here. Come on back in, welcome back. And boom, you realize you wake back up from your self-induced amnesia. And now you understand more powerfully what you can create. And you know yourself in a way, in a broader way, in a bigger way than you ever could have as a rich silver spooner. Are you following what I mean?
Yeah. So what I think is,
I wonder what I'll create now.
So it's an experience we had to have. Is that what you're saying?
Oh, no. There was no had to have about it. In my analogy here of the rich man, he didn't have to have it. No one was forcing that choice upon him. I mean, if we go back to the symbol of the mind of God, well, what's outside of God to say, you better or else? It was just a simple choice, birthed in curiosity, wonder, and innocence.
So, are you saying that that we are totally abundant, yet we've chosen to have this experience so that we can awaken to the realization and experience to an even greater degree?
Exactly. Everyone is already infinitely abundant, and the ironic thing is we're all using our divinity, the power of consciousness itself, to misperceive what we think we are. That's the cosmic joke. That's why the Buddha laughed so much. Literally, we're doing it to ourselves, not because we have to, but because we can and we're choosing to.
Yeah, I've got you.
Hey, thanks so much for listening to the Be Empowered podcast. For more on regaining your power by bridging that gap between who you think you are right now and who you really are, go to www.beempoweredgroup.com and enter your name and email address to receive a free ebook and get notified of any upcoming podcasts. Remember, when you know and feel connected to your spiritual mind, you master your world. Changing your energy transforms your life.